to ancient Egypt. When it comes to ancient vehicles, what do you imagine? Probably chariots? Maybe Viking ships? A Trojan horse as a last resort? But certainly not a boat the size of a modern aircraft carrier. Meanwhile, it's a real boat from the 3rd century BC. This huge galley was known as Technology.Ancient, and it was built by order of Pharaoh Ptolemy IV Philopator. And the ship was so big that some scientists doubt whether it existed at all. It supposedly was 130 meters long, 20 wide, 25 meters high, and was all made of wood. Technology.Ancient was the largest wooden ship in history. It had 2 bows, 2 sterns, and in fact looked like 2 very long boats connected by a platform. Something like an ancient catamaran weighing almost 4,000 tons. It was supposed to demonstrate the power and wealth of Egypt and obviously the amount of wood they had to spare. Unlike modern aircraft carriers, which move thanks to the energy of nuclear reactors, the Technology.Ancient could only rely on the power of the rowers. And there were 4,000 of them, 50 oars on each side. It's not clear how the Egyptians managed to accommodate so many people and make them row simultaneously. There were also 400 sailors on board, as well as 2,850 soldiers. On one hand, it sounds incredibly cool, a whole small town in a boat. But on the other hand, just imagine how crowded it was, and the working conditions of the rowers. Definitely not a dream job. Let's remain in the country of the pyramids and take a look at another invention from the past, but worthy of the future. Some people feel disgust at everything connected with war, and it's pretty obvious why. However, many scientific discoveries were made thanks to the desire to defeat the enemy. Wars have always stimulated technology, and as a result, mankind has learned how to create entire factories to create war machines. And what about the ancient world? Well, not in vain we mention factories, right? For example, let's talk about tanks. Most likely you thought about them when I mentioned military machines. Tanks are like a modern version of the ancient battle chariot. Even scientists are talking about that. In the end, the chariot provided mobility on the battlefield and was not just a means of transportation, but a formidable weapon. But armies needed a lot of chariots, and therefore, 3,000 years ago, Pharaoh Ramesses II built a factory that produced them. The Battle of Kadesh was around the corner. It was the largest chariot battle ever fought. In 1274 BC, the Egyptians sent a great number of chariots to battle, and eventually there were about 4,000 chariots from both sides on the battlefield. Imagine the heat, the dust, and the screams. But let's get back to the factory. Archaeologists believe that it was located in the Nile Delta, and in addition to training grounds, there was a real assembly line. It was about the same as those at any modern factory, except it didn't have a conveyor belt. Chariots were assembled from parts that were created separately, and this greatly accelerated the process. So, if you're told that it was Henry Ford who created the assembly line method in the 20th century, you can argue that it was the Egyptians who did it 3,000 years ago.